And that's it for this part of the course, really. We've done all the basics. We've done enough for you now to be able to work within Excel and do some really effective things. As I said in the last few videos, there are lots of functions. I mean, if we just look at the financial side here, we can see there is an enormous amount of functions in here, which we could go through each and every one of them and discuss and describe and build an example why, but there's no point to that as such. You understand how functions work, and it's more important that we now extend into other areas of Excel. Same thing with logical. We've done almost all of these at some point or other. We've not looked at if NA or if error, but you've done enough, gained enough experience to be able to say, okay, yes, I can work out what that does. So if I have an error, I know to use an if error to detect that. Same thing with text. We've done a huge number in there, looked at all these. We've done the proper and all this lot. So we've done a fair chunk of these, and there are more that you could play around with. But again, if you need them, you'll identify you need them. You're not going to memorize all of these. You just have to be in a situation where you say, okay, I'm using Excel. I want to do this. What function do I need to use? Or what group of functions do I need to use to achieve what I want to do? Same thing with date and time. And if we have a look under more functions, and if I just go to statistics, I can see that there's a huge number of functions there. So let's stop there. Let's now accept where we've gone. We've done an enormous amount in these 90 odd lessons. We have achieved a considerable amount. This is a lesson 2 spreadsheet, and that's what this has dealt with in those times. So you've done incredibly well. Certain things that we want to be aware of that we haven't looked at, really simple things, are options under the formulae. For example, I have show formulae, and that's very useful at times. People often forget it's there, but it does allow me to see the formulae in the window just to check where things are. In addition to this, one of the really nice things is to choose a cell, for example, and trace dependence. And this arrow helps me identify which cells are using the data that's located there. I can remove the arrow simply by choosing that. The other way is to choose one with a function and just ask, well, where's the precedence? And that's showing me there that this is using that data there. And we can remove the arrows. And when you do that, you can either select which arrows you want to remove, or in our case, remove all of them. We can error check. We haven't got any errors here, but it will trace through errors through there, and it can even evaluate. So if I click evaluate formally, it will start to run it through, and it tells me something about that. The most recent results appears capitalized. So it's going to give me a little bit of data around there. So evaluate that. Tan 0 is what it's now going to evaluate as, and it's going to come back as 0 and restart. So I can step through formally to see if they're producing the right thing. So that's what the step in and evaluate is all about. So I'll close that. So these are really nice to use. The watch window allows me to decide on, I can add watches to watch actual cells or named ranges or a particular value or particular formula or a sheet. So this will, if I wanted to watch this one here, I could add a watch and say I want to add that one, and it's telling me which book it's in, which sheet is it on, what cell it's in, what value it currently holds, and what formula it is. Now, obviously, that's rather dull with this one. It's only doing one thing. But if you've got a relatively complex system, think of our equation for circular orbiting, and yeah, that might be useful there. And the more complex your spreadsheets get, the more things like the watch window become really useful. I'm going to close that off. But if we go back to it, it's still there. I can always delete the watch if I wanted to. That's not a problem. And again, show formally is an on-off button. It's a binary choice, so I can click those away. Sometimes your sheets are so complex that every time you make a change, the sheet takes time to go through all your calculations. So you can tell it to stop doing the calculations. So when you make a change, it doesn't perform that. For example, if I change that to manual now, and I change this to 8, then what should happen is all these will change, but clearly they can't because I've just told it to do it manually. So then what I can do is calculate now, and it's gone through the whole workbook calculating. And that's important to remember. That's why the first workbook was going so slowly, because, by the way, it's still on manual, so calculate now. And I'm going to put that back to automatic. So when you've got a worksheet, it's doing all the sheets because he's got to check them all. So if you've got a complex worksheet, setting it to manual and then saying, okay, calculate sheet, so it only focuses on the one you're on, can be useful. Particularly if you've got an error somewhere, the watch window comes in, you've got a number of other tools that are available for you. Now, things like the name manager, we have glanced at, but we can see now how many names we've used. All the tables I've created have developed names, and I can then explore those if I wanted to and have a closer look. There's the formula that created what I'm working there. So that's what it's telling me is being used there to create this data. So I've got all of these to have a look at. So there's a lot of information built into here. It's a really good tool. Hopefully you've really enjoyed the last few lessons. You've understood what Excel is doing and you're keen to do more, because that's the target next. Let's go. Let's start extending our knowledge into even more exciting areas of Excel. See you in the next lesson.